In this video, I'm going to cover both the document preparation for submitting to LAUSD and the document preparation for submitting to the Division of the State Architect, DSA. A lot of the preparation is repeated and it's duplicated for both of these submissions, so I want to just cover both of them simultaneously. As the architect, you'll want to refer to the DSA PR 1804. That covers the specific setup for DSA submission. There's an additional document, ERP1 from LAUSD, which is the submission setup for submission to LAUSD. But again, what I'm going to show you is repeated essentially for both, is duplicated for both. So let's go ahead and start with a set of PDFs, a PDF set that's been created by the architect. A couple things to note here. Prior to even creating this PDF, it's important to review some of the guidelines that are set up for how to set up a set of drawings. You'll want to make sure that you are not creating, let's start over, sorry. You'll want to make sure that you're not creating hatch patterns that are not within the range of what DSA requires. And you can see if you come back here on the second to last page, they show you some of this information. You'll also want to make sure that you have consistency in the layout of your drawings. So you'll want to follow those creation guidelines even prior to making your drawing set. So once that drawing set is created, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure a couple of things exist now that that drawing set has been created. One is you'll obviously want to make sure that you have a stamp area for the DSA. That's going to be important for submitting to the DSA. You're also going to want to make sure that your file size of your PDF is less than 1 gigabyte. So if it's more than 1 gigabyte, you'll need to break that into volumes. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with this setup here. You'll see when I look over here at the thumbnails, these thumbnails don't list the pages. The thumbnails need to list the page numbers of each one of these. So it's important that they don't just say 1, 2, 3, and 4. So to create this, what I suggest you do is you'll start with that is you'll go ahead and come to create page labels right here. And when you're creating, you're basically selecting a page region. So I'm going to click page region, and I'm going to select. And the way this works is it's going to contain the sheet number, which is what I just selected there, and then a space, a hyphen, and then a space, and then the sheet title. So you can see the sheet title. I'm just going to drag around here. And you can see the preview right here tells me that we're looking pretty good. I'm going to do it for all the pages. If you mess up or if there's something that doesn't work, you can always come back and change this to work on just a couple of pages. But for the most part, assuming that your title block is in alignment, you should be able to get a pretty easy set of sheet page titles based upon this information. So I've selected that information. I've selected, doesn't really matter what sheet you start with. And you can see now all of my pages, they're no longer 1, 2, 3, 4. But you can see there are some problems here. It looks like it pulled some of this information, for example, this sheet number right here. And that just tells me that when I created this, when I made my page region, when I hit select, I needed to go a little tighter in on this. So you can see there, that should fix that problem. So I'll go ahead and do this a second time. And again, it's usually not the end of the world if you don't have it perfect, but you can use Bluebeam to create this information. So once you have these sheet labels correctly named, and you see how they're looking pretty good now that I made that small modification, you can go ahead now and maybe expand this out just to make sure that this looks really good. I'm going to assume everything is good. If there's obviously single ones that maybe didn't get done correctly, like this one, you can always double click right on there to make the change, or you can hit F2 on your keyboard and make that change. I'm not going to do that for the sake of time here. Once you've done that, you're going to come into bookmarks, and you're going to basically create bookmarks based upon those page labels that you just created. So I don't have to go through the trouble of selecting these regions anymore to make these bookmarks. All I have to do is select from the page label right here for all the pages, and I hit OK, and you see all of these bookmarks have just been created. Once you've done that, it's important that you nest those bookmarks. So what that means, nesting a bookmark, means that what you're doing is you're coming in here and this is the beginning of the architectural section, here the beginning of the structural section, here the beginning of the mechanical section. You're coming in, you're adding a bookmark right before that. You would call that architectural. For the sake of time, I'll just hit an A. Again, I'm right-clicking and I'm adding before. I'm going to call that S. And one thing that when you're doing this that's important to note is that you make sure you don't just right-click down here and add before. You want to actually click on this and make sure that this drawing is showing here on the screen before you do that add and then add before. Because what happens is it will throw off your bookmarks a little bit if you don't do it in that manner. So you see I click here first, and then I add before, and I create my thing. I create my titles. Now, nesting is also very easy. I've created the headings, and I would do it for all the remainders as well, but again, I won't do all of them. You hit the Shift key and select your things, and then what you do is you just drag. See, I'm just dragging a little bit over here on the right-hand side, and that creates that nesting right here. So I can create pretty quickly by going and selecting these and then just dragging them up and to the right a little bit. I can create all of these nested bookmarks. And so now you see, as we go through, you can see how they've become nested. So that covers the thumbnails, that covers the bookmarks. The next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that you've deleted all of the layers in this drawing. So if there are any layers here, you're going to want to go ahead and delete them, or just hit the delete key or hit delete right here. When you're deleting layers, it is important to note that you're not actually deleting any of the content of the layer as long as you don't check these boxes. So be sure not to check these boxes when you're deleting the layers, and then everything that's on those layers will remain within the drawing. Now, you can see it takes a little bit of time just to delete a single layer. If you have multi-volume sets, you may want to delete all the layers before you join all the volumes together, if you are doing that, so that you can save yourself a little bit of time. Once those layers are deleted, you'll see you won't see any more layers. You're done there. You'll want to then come and make sure that you also have the drawing flattened. And what that means basically is there are no more markups at the bottom. Now, the last step of this is to create hyperlinks. Now, unfortunately, I need to use an older version to create the hyperlinks, an older version of Bluebeam. But the process overall is exactly the same once we get into the batch link. So I'm going to do from here a new batch link. In the new version of Bluebeam, it's just in the batch here, and there would be a thing for link, but unfortunately the version I have doesn't have that. So everything else is the same though. Once you go into the batch link, you add the open file, which is your drawing. You click next, And then you go ahead and click generate right here. And what that will do is that will now create, based upon, again, it's based upon these sheet numbers, it will create a link to each one of these. So when anywhere in the drawing where it happens to find an E-11, it will go to page 27 and it will automatically link you to page 27 in the drawing. If you want, you can go to link options down here, and you can include a color as well. So you can actually create a color that highlights. You can create one that creates a underline or maybe a solid thing around it, whatever you want to do basically. So you'll go ahead and do that, hit OK, and click Run down here. And once you click Run, it's going to go ahead and create your hyperlinks. Once the hyperlinks are created, you'll notice that you'll see a thing that says that it's been completed. For this, it looks really good. There were 0 that were skipped or 0 that we had problems. And now when I zoom in here, you can see that yellow makes it very easy for me to see that the hyperlinks were created. It makes it very easy for me to go to particular pages within this. And when I go to those pages, then you can see the hyperlink. So I can maneuver around my drawing and I can just look for that yellow to make sure that it shows me that some of the hyperlinks were created. Once you've confirmed that those hyperlinks are created, what you can do here is, now that we're back here again, you can come in, and very last setup procedure you need to follow is to make sure that this is flattened. Sometimes when you are creating hyperlinks, it will create markups, especially if you're doing things like highlighting. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you come up to the document pull-down menu and click Flatten right here. And that will flatten all the markups down so that when you turn this over to either LAUSD or to the DSA, there will be no markups getting in their way. So you can see now down here in the markups list, it is completely empty. That's how you know that this document has been flattened. So the very last thing you'll need to do is you'll need to consider the naming of the document. So the DSA obviously has a different naming structure than LAUSD. Refer to either of those procedures for the specific naming of the documents as you're going through. So that concludes setup of PDFs for submission either to LAUSD or to the DSA.